Anchor is a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, distributing, and monetizing your podcast. And best of all, it's 100% free. And it's 100% ridiculously easy to use. We find it really convenient for Night Moves Radio and our Cloverleaf Radio network. We record when it's best for us, and best of all, we can record on the go or at home. With this easy app, it makes doing our show so much fun and very easy. Anyone wanting to start a podcast? I suggest using Anchor. Perhaps it'd be a great starting point for you.
Blog Talk Radio.
Good evening. This is your good friend, the very esteemed and well-travelled Clarence Copernicus Cloverleaf, welcoming you to another exciting edition of Cloverleaf Radio, hosted by the host with the most, Jimmy Falcon. You can always feel free to call in at 602-753-1883 to ask a question to the host or any of his well-established guests. Just please remember when calling in to be on your best behavior. This is a G-rated show, you know. Hey, that was a wicked rhyme. Anywho, just be sure to be kind and courteous. Now, on to the main event. Hello to all our dear listeners. This is your spokesman with a plan, Clarence Cloverleaf, coming to you after somewhat of an absent spell, as since December of 2018, I've been sailing around the world. From Italy to Canada, I've been making my way across this beautiful land of ours, searching for new meaning to an older existence. I'm happy to say I'm back now, and here to let you in on some stuff going on as of late. In mid-2018, the Cloverleaf Radio Network expanded to include our friends Josh and Ariana over at Night Moves Radio. It's been a splendid partnership, and Jimmy, Jane, and I are happy to welcome them to the family. They also brought along Soul Stories, which features inspiring poetry, read by the author herself, Ariana Cherry. We've been brought onto many new networks, including Anchor, the ASY Podcasting Network, WordPress, Podbean, even iHeartRadio. We've also started a fresh new YouTube page, as well as updating our Twitter, Blog Talk Radio, and expanding our network to new segments, more radio reunions, all news guests, and so much more. Also, the Cloverleaf Radio Network, Jimmy, Ariana, and Josh, will be appearing upcoming at two conventions, SilCon and Dark History Con. SilCon will be held September 6th and 7th, 2019, at Cross County Mall in Mattoon, Illinois, while Dark History Con will be held October 26th and 27th, 2019, at the City Center Performance Venue in Champaign, Illinois. Be sure and check out the newest guest appearances, as well as find out about up-to-date ticket information by visiting www.silcon.com or www.dhhcon.com. Although, please note, SilCon is a free event. Thank you, everyone, for continuing to follow and support us for 11 years. This is Clarence Cloverleaf saying, good day to you.
Alrighty, we are back for another exciting edition of Cloverleaf Radio. I'm the host of the Most Jimmy Falcon, and by my side joining us today is the lovely and talented Amy Hale. How's it going, Amy?
It's going great. How are you?
Doing pretty good. Weather's a little warm here, but it's always kind of funky in Illinois. You get one thing or the other thing. So as long as it's not snowing, I'm pretty happy. But how's things going for you?
It's about the same. I'm trying to get ready for an event that I'm at tomorrow in St. Louis, and glad that it's not snowing too. I can't do the snow. It's just not my favorite thing at all.
Well, I always like for everyone to promote themselves. So, what a great event do you have going on tomorrow?
I am going to be at the Toyland Show in St. Charles tomorrow, and I believe it runs 9 to 3.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's a pretty neat show. I mean, if you like comics and collectibles, there's going to be some artists there: Guy Gilchrist, Philo Barnhart, Carl Mossad. So it's going to be a lot of fun.
Very cool. Well, I noticed one thing when I was coming to find out for more information about you, that your website has the best under construction thing I've ever seen.
Thank you. Yeah, I try to make it interesting when I've got to shake things up a bit.
But I guess the start would want to be how or when did you decide that you could make these really interesting and fun and even scary worlds come to life so well? Your writing is very great.
Thank you. When I was a kid, really, I've always been telling stories. Sometimes they got me in trouble, but I've always been telling stories. And I think the first time I really realized that it might be something I wanted to do was when I was 12. And I had a friend come over. She was going to spend the night, and we were standing outside, and I started spinning this tale about these creepy clouds that were over the house. And I freaked her out so bad that she called her mom and had her come pick her up to take her home. She did not want to spend the night. Thankfully, she's still my friend, and we laugh about it now. But yeah, she just it was too good, too real for her, I guess. She didn't want to stay at my house that night. So I kind of realized then I might be onto something.
It's really interesting. If you even have the funny and sad stuff that happens in your life, it can almost make you create a whole other dimension, or even in this world, something that's far scarier than many people will see in their mundane life.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We all have different experiences, and like you said, funny, sad, whatever, there's always something you can take out of each experience. And I've applied a lot of those lessons I've learned and things that I've seen to my stories.
And you even have a trilogy, the Shadows of Jane, Shadows of Deception, Shadows of Deliverance.
Yes.
And how, as far as, when an author gets into writing, a series on things, I know sometimes they stick with the same characters. There may be some new ones thrown in. It's like anything else. But how did you decide you wanted to work on this trilogy?
It's really kind of weird because I hadn't really planned on doing a trilogy, and then I had this really short snippet of a dream about a young woman kind of thrashing in bed and having a terrible dream. And while she's having this nightmare, there are things kind of flying around the room that are reacting to the way her emotions are, so she's controlling these things. And I woke up and I thought, well, that's interesting, and I kind of jotted down what I could remember. And after spending a few days just thinking about it and putting ideas together how it could work, I came up with this 3-book series. And it's one of those things where I wrote the first book, and then I took a break, and I wrote like a rom-com, just trying to kind of clear my head. And then I started the second book, and I let it kind of play out. I'm one of those people that I kind of half plot, half pants it. So I have an idea where it's starting and where it's ending, and I just kind of let the story take over as I write and see where it goes. And of course, in the second book, there are a lot of new characters introduced, but it all meshes well at the end. And it's been a really popular series. I've won 3 awards for the series so far.
Wow. And see, that's amazing because anybody could sit down and write. It's kind of like, I can do impressions, but I've always been told you can have the paper and, not be the pen, or how they say that. But you can have the certain talent to make funny voices, but that doesn't mean you can be a great actor. Just so maybe because I have a great dream doesn't mean I could sit down and write a whole book about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. I mean, I think it depends on not just maybe your ability, but maybe your determination. Because I know a lot of people that, well, even for me, there was a long time when I thought, I'd love to do it, but I don't think I can. I don't think I have the ability. And in the beginning, I made a lot of mistakes. I had a lot to learn, and I'm still learning. But it's one of those things where the more I do it, the more I learn and the better I get. So I always try to encourage people, if you want to write a book, sit down and start. Just start, because the more you do it, the more you're going to learn. Ask people questions. People that are doing it, go talk to them. Ask them to point you towards resources. There's so much information out there that it's hard to not learn if you're really looking for information.
And that kind of sounds to me like some of the experiences I've been through with doing the show, because I'll talk to people who maybe I interviewed 10 years ago and you're still doing this? Like, what? So you're still doing this? Like, it's just kind of crazy. I've seen people come and go, and people have gotten huge and are still doing it. But I guess, like, you really have to have a passion for what you're doing.
Yeah, you do. Because I know a lot of people think, oh, I'll write a book and it'll be a bestseller and I'll be,
right.
I'll be the next J.K. Rowling or Stephanie Meyer or whatever overnight. And that's just not how it works. You have to be willing to suffer through sometimes when you're really broke. There's a lot of discouragement. It has to be a passion, because if it's not, you're not going to stick with it through the hard times. And there are a lot of hard times.
Absolutely. And looking more towards some of the newer things, I saw that you have the Havenwood Falls series, Havenwood Falls High.
Yes.
And Havenwood Falls. And what did you decide to kind of work on these? Lots of interesting characters, especially with Miranda Saunders. Seems really interesting.
Oh, yeah. So Havenwood Falls is a multi-author shared world started by Angora Productions. And I was approached by the owner to see if I would be interested in writing for them. I think when I started, they only had about 6 authors writing in the world. And they had 4 different lines. They have the Havenwood Falls High, which is our YA line, Havenwood Falls, which is the new adult, and then there's Legends of Havenwood Falls, which is kind of an origin story kind of thing. And then they just opened up here in the last year, Sin and Silk, which is kind of the steamy stuff. So they asked me if I'd be interested, and we discussed some story ideas, and I signed contracts, and I just finished my 4th book for them. And I write in the YA and the new adult line. And it's fun because I've got to, we have to work together with all these other authors to make sure that everything lines up. We're not saying one character's here in one story and then putting that character somewhere else in a different story. Everything has to match.
Right.
So it's a lot of work, but it's also a lot of fun. And it's given me a chance to really branch out and try new things. I'd never written vampires. I'd never written dragons. I'd never written any kind of shifter. And getting to do that has probably been one of my favorite things to do.
Well, something else I noticed you've done some romantic comedies as well, which I thought was pretty cool, because the stuff I'd seen you do seemed like it could be kind of scary to some people, very neat in my mind, but like a certain style, and you have these romantic comedies, which really just makes people just want to giggle and laugh out loud. So why did you decide to maybe go into the romantic comedies as well?
Well, when I started, the first book I wrote was a romantic suspense, and I really kind of envisioned myself being a romance writer in some way or another. And while all my books do have romance, I've kind of more ventured towards where there's more emphasis on the action than the romance in a lot of them. But when I wrote my first book, I wrote the Ulterior Motives, and that was my romantic suspense. And then I went next with Shadows of Jane, and then I needed a break. I wanted something that wasn't quite so heavy, something a little more fun, and I'd had this idea in my head about this story about a young teacher whose love life is just a huge disaster. And that's where Catching Whitney came in. And then I wrote the second trilogy book, and then I came back and I wrote about Whitney's best friend, Lindsay, in Letters from Jason. And they were a nice change of pace. They were fun. It wasn't quite so heavy, because, writing this heavier stuff, it can really kind of weigh on you after a while. And it's one of those things where I just wanted to do something different. And I realized then that I didn't want to be pigeonholed into one genre. So now I've got paranormal, I've got suspense, I've got rom-com, and I'm even working on, I'm usually working on 2 or 3 books at one time, but I've got a horror and a thriller book that I'm working on. So I'm kind of doing a little bit of everything that kind of strikes my fancy right now.
Yeah, you made a great point, though, because